Hey guys, Zach Slaughter here with another episode of Star Wars Starship Versus, the series where I take two spaceships in the Star Wars universe, put them head to head, and try to predict which one would come out on top. Or at least it's what I usually do, because on some special days like today, we do cross-universe battles where I take a ship from Star Wars and put it against a ship from another fictional universe. Today we are doing what is easily, far and away, my most requested matchup, the Covenant Supercarrier from the Halo series against the Executor Super Star Destroyer from Star Wars. And I had been intending, and I told you guys that I was going to wait until the new Halo Cross Sections book came out, because I thought that would give some reference and help me with some of the Covenant's weaponry, because we don't really have any really solid numbers for the kind of guns that most Covenant ships had. I probably still will do that versus later, depending on whether you guys want it, and you can let me know down in the comments, but that won't be until probably October, so I figured, hey, why not do one now when you guys are clamoring for it? Today's episode is going to be a little different than one of my verses, and while I'll probably do a structured 3-part discussion later when the book comes out, today we're just going to talk about these two ships and how they really compare. So I'm not going to be going through weaponry, defensive capabilities, intangibles, and fighter support like I normally would. Instead, I'm just going to talk, and at the end, I will tell you who I think would come out on top, and I'll look at both Star Wars Legends and Star Wars Canon. Alright, so let's open the discussion with a comparison of the Halo and the Star Wars universes. And as I do this, please keep in mind that I'm a huge fan of both of these series, and just because I may say at one point that one universe has more advanced technology or has more powerful weapons than the other, doesn't necessarily mean that it's better, it's just different. This is especially true where Halo is grounded in reality, at least somewhat, whereas Star Wars is very much science fantasy. And the way the technology is used in the two universes kind of reflect that. This also leads us into kind of a secondary problem, which is numbers and schematics and statistics which are thrown up in books or reference books or guides don't always necessarily reflect how we see the weapons behave, whether on TV or in a narrative, in a comic book, whatever. Which puts people like me in the kind of unenviable position of having to choose whether we like the numbers that we get in reference books or the feats that we see in movies or on TV or in video games more. So I'll also come to discuss that at the end. So let's talk basically about these two vehicles a little bit. The Covenant Supercarrier is a gigantic weapon of war. It's the largest ship, at least largest dedicated warship used by the Covenant, and is one of the largest ships in the Halo universe. And at 30 kilometers long, the CSO-Class Supercarrier even dwarfed the Executor-Class Super Star Destroyer, which itself was 19 kilometers long. Other than the size, there's not a whole lot we know about the Covenant Supercarrier. We can guess that it was probably extremely well armed, and the O in CSO means that it was somehow upgraded by Forerunner technology. We don't know how numerous its weapons were, as I said, but we do know that it had at least one energy projector and most likely multiple, and that it was probably very, very powerful. Funny enough, with the Executor, it was pretty much the exact opposite. We know almost everything there is to know about it, from its size, to its power output, to the weapons it had, everything. This is particularly in Legends, and that's how I'm gonna kind of dictate the conversation, and I'll bring Canon in at the end. Without getting into the nitty-gritty, the Executor had over 6,000 anti-capital ship weapons, and these were extremely heavy and extremely effective, at least in the Star Wars universe. That's kind of a basic Reader's Digest version of the two ships. I guess the main takeaway really though is that they're both the ultimate capital ship and really the ultimate flagship for their respective fleets and their respective factions. Ultimately though, I don't think this matchup really comes down to a close look at these ships' weapons, its weapon placements, the size of the ship, and its shape. I don't think that's really important at this point. I think the elephant in the room, and really the theme that always seems to dominate these matchups, is the difference in power between different universes. For an example of this, we can look at the Executor, and one of the essential guides has put the shield output at 3.8 times 10 to the 26 watts. To be honest, this is an absolutely ludicrous number, and it's equal to the amount of energy outputted by the sun. Not the amount of energy that hits the Earth, but outputted in total by the sun. And yeah, that is just the shield of the ship, not the weapons, just the shield. And as crazy as that number is, it's consistent with what we see in other large Star Wars capital ships. Now, the math does get a little messy, but that kind of energy is much higher than we see from even the Super Mac cannons in Halo, which are in the gigaton range. The problem is, I don't think that necessarily matches what we see on screen. We see both in movies and in television shows, the shields of ships get taken down fairly easily. But again, there's another problem with that. If you're on the Star Wars side, you can look at some of the calculations that have been made, particularly the one that was at one point canon in one of the Incredible Cross Sections book, which put the power of a turbo laser at 200 gigatons per shot. shot, and again, that is a completely ludicrous number. And this is the power differential that I'm talking about. It was there, at least in Legends. I don't really know if it makes sense, and I kind of don't think it does, but it is there. And if that's the case, I don't even think the energy beam projectors of the Covenant Supercarrier will be able to wipe out the Executor. So yeah, if we're going by what the official numbers were in Legends, it's not even really close, because the Super Star Destroyer is most likely orders of magnitude more powerful than the CSO, despite not really appearing to be. But let's forget numbers, and let's certainly forget Legends numbers for a while, and let's take a look at this kind of unscientifically. So we've got two ships, and one is clearly not only much longer than the other one, but also much more massive. However, they both have very impressive firepower, and we know that both can really glass the surface of a planet in probably not too long. However, the weaponry they use is completely different. The main weapon of the CSO will most likely be its energy projector, which is kind of like a mining laser. It focuses a lot of energy in a single beam. It can take out ships in one shot usually. At least UNSC ships, but they don't really have the same kind of shielding that ships in the Star Wars universe do. The Executor, on the other hand, has many smaller turrets which can focus fire over a large area. It has no sort of super laser, has no special weaponry, just a lot of really good turbo lasers. And the Halo universe doesn't really have anything analogous to that. I mean, Covenant ships do have anti-capital ship weapons, which kind of seem like lasers, but they don't act in a similar way whatsoever. Both ships will also carry most likely thousands of fighters. Some of the Covenant will have shielded fighters, some of them won't, while mostly everything that comes out of the Executor will be unshielded. However, both of these ships have extensive anti-starfighter capabilities, so I don't see the fighters really doing a whole lot here unless one side is able to completely overwhelm the other. So still, even in this kind of no science scenario, it comes down to the power of the weapons. And as I mentioned, both ships have weapons which can seriously damage a planet, wiping out civilizations on it. So who wins? Well, in my mind, you've got to give it to the larger Covenant ship. And a lot of this is just due to its massive size. It must have incredible shielding just due to the sheer amount of space that it has for generators and other things like that. The Covenant do have a weakness where when they fire certain weapons, small portions of the energy shields need to go down, but I'm not really sure how effectively the Executor will be able to take advantage of that. And I just think these glassing beams are really devastating weapons. They can work from very, very far away, are extremely effective and extremely accurate, and will put a lot of pressure on a single point of shield. And again, that's not really something that Star Wars ships are used to. We hear often about how powerful the Star Wars turbo lasers are, but I haven't really seen the same kind of feat as I have with the Covenant weapons. And the power level is completely inconsistent. I mean, the Millennium Falcon takes a hit from a turbo laser when the Empire is trying to destroy it, and it shrugs it off. Yet, in the asteroid field and the Empire Strikes Back, a Star Destroyer destroys an asteroid with pretty much no difficulty. And I do think that this will be a close battle. I don't think the Covenant will be ready to face an enemy with so many weapons, especially non-conventional weapons. They're used to fighting rockets and MAC cannons, not really laser beams. So I think the Executor will do serious damage to the ship's shields, but will ultimately fall to the glassing laser or the energy projector. It's just too powerful, and most likely the CSO has 7, 8, maybe even more of them. And again, remember, that's if we're talking unscientifically. If we're looking at the actual numbers, at least from Star Wars Legends, the Executor is just on a whole nother level and just has way too much power and will completely overwhelm the Covenant Supercarrier. But what about Star Wars canon? Where do we put this new Star Wars universe? And I think it's probably somewhere in the middle, but we don't really know yet. I don't think Star Wars canon is going to quite adopt the ridiculous numbers that Star Wars Legends had. Certainly, I don't think we're going to get another 200 gigaton turbo laser number anytime soon. I mean, on the other side, Disney's not going to want to gimp their ships and make Executor Super Star Destroyers out to be something that's super weak. They're going to want to keep them fearsome. But then we look at Rebels, where Star Destroyers and turbo lasers don't seem particularly powerful, but I guess we can also remember with that it's a kid's show. So those are my answers, and I know I kind of weaseled my way out of this one. I wanted it to be kind of a more informal video because it's hard talking about two universes and comparing them like this. If you guys do want a more formal comparison video where I look at the 3 categories and intangibles and come up with a direct, clear winner and a clear number of times they win out of 10, let me know down in the comments, and I will do that if you guys really, really want it. But again, I'm going to wait until the new reference book comes out. Just to summarize my feelings quickly, because I know that this video was kind of messy. If it comes down to the actual Legends numbers, and we're looking at what the authors have given us, it probably has to go to the Executor. Just Star Wars is on a whole different level of power, at least when considering the Covenant. However, if I just talk about which ship I feel logically would win, without really looking into the numbers or the power outputs or yields, or anything really scientific like that, I have to say the CSO, and that's just based on what we've seen of Star Destroyers in Star Wars movies and the TV shows, and also what we've seen in the CSO in Halo Reach. But I would love to hear what you guys think. I'm not going to put a poll this time because it's kind of hard to poll this video, but let me know down in the comments, and I hope we can have some really good discussions and get into the nitty-gritty. I'm looking forward to reading them. Also, tell me if you want to see a more formal version of this matchup once the Halo Fleet Battles comes out. I mean, I don't really know if it's possible. The two ships and the two universes may just be too incongruent, but I will try. Also, of course, if you have any suggestions for future matchups, if you have any ideas, let me know and post down in the comments. If you see one that you like, make sure to give it a nice big thumbs up and a supporting comment. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you want to support the channel, check me out on my GoFundMe page, where I'm trying to raise money for a microphone and perhaps a new computer. Also, feel free to follow me on Twitter and join the Discord. It's a whole lot of fun. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, guys. As always, may the Force be with you.